Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. You're the land of the free and the home of the brave on the beautiful March the 15th, 2021. Ronda Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, we're doing okay, but I want to give a shout-out today for the historical moment. Deb Haaland, who became the Interior Secretary of the United States today, Charlton, the first Native American and indigenous woman to ever hold an office in any presidential administration in American history. Once again, I want to give a shout-out to our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses and doctors and first responders. They're always there, being first in line.
Always being first in line. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing. The whole world needs to take a pause. It's always good to pause, Big C, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, our veterans have a motto on the battlefield: no soldier left behind. And that's how we need to look at our veterans in American society. No soldier left behind. We lose over 24 a day to suicide in this country every day, Charlton. And so we are leaving these soldiers behind as a culture in America. And we need to pay more attention to their needs, their mental, physical, and financial needs as a country, because suicide is a horrific pandemic that's been going on amongst these veterans for too long. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but this needs to become a cultural event in Americans. No veteran left behind.
No veteran left behind. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also want to say, very happy to be affiliated with Valley, home with weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid is a home run king. Barry Bonds, when you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting people back to work just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and do it now. Say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from anywhere in the world, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Big C, I know so many things happen in this country that we like to call a first. We want to say we're the first to land on the moon. We want to say we're the first to come up with a vaccine. We want to say we're the first for everything. But you mentioned something about Native Americans, and there was a lot of African Americans also that have a lot of Native American ancestry. If you don't mind repeating, what did Native Americans do again today for the first time? Big C, your thoughts?
Deb Haaland She was a senator from New Mexico. She became the first Native American woman to ever hold office in any administration, Charlton. She became confirmed today as the Interior Secretary of America. You think about this. She's a part of the original people of this continent, Charlton, that had been done so wrong over the decades and centuries in America. And now to have a woman rise to as a cabinet member under President Joe Biden.
Yeah.
What a marvelous day for the Native Americans.
You know, it's a marvelous day, and when we think about that, maybe we are closer to getting to the real word of reparations. I know there's so many people that talk about reparations. What do you mean reparations? Native Americans, they were sent on reservations, and now oftentimes many people, when they want to go to a gambling spot or to a casino, they will actually go on Native American land where the Native Americans have that benefit. Even though their land was taken from them, they were given something back. And unfortunately for African Americans, that never happened. And hopefully that will open up more dialogue and talk for that. I really wonder, oftentimes, Big C, there are, at least in California, many casinos are on Native American land. Big C, your thoughts?
But those are also funded by venture capitalists. I mean, they're on Native American land, but corporate America is the one who is putting those casinos out there. When you look at all those casinos that are on native land across the entire United States, Charlton, they're backed by huge gaming corporations that are out of Las Vegas that are traded on the stock market.
Yeah.
Yes, they receive some subsidies, but they do not own the casinos, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's always some type of hoodwink where land's taken from people and ancestry been done away with, and then people say, well, I can't believe that they have all this property out here and we have to go to their locations to gamble. I've heard some mainstream people tell me that, but it's all fair in love and war. It's good to have good news. And I also, you know, when it comes to talking to different people, and some people feel like there could be more done to Biden administration, it's like, look, it hasn't even been 2 months. I mean, January 20th, right now we're only at the 15th. It hasn't been 2 months, but he's done more in less than 2 months than the previous administration did in 4 years. So I really appreciate the growth that's happening with the Biden administration. Big C, do you sense that people feel that there could be more being done? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, that's American ingenuity, Charlton, always being impatient and not feeling that you're getting enough. I mean, it started with you not going out to vote. Most of those people that are impatient. But things take time. I mean, when you have Republicans fighting everything that the Democratic Party is doing, they're talking about uniting a country, pulling a country together, and yet they're constantly keeping the country divided.
Yeah, I mean, everybody can do better, but I do have my own thought, too. I think about Representative, member of the House, James Clyburn, Big C, American politician, Democratic member of the House of Representatives from South Carolina. He served as House Majority Whip since 2019. He's 80 years old, and oftentimes he's credited with getting Joe Biden elected. And he talks about we have to treat this broadband as an integral to infrastructure. Without internet, you can't do online learning. It helps, you know, that affects a lot of rural areas where they don't have access to internet. You can't find jobs online. You can't participate, you know, in telehealth that a lot of companies are doing now for medicine. Today, having internet is vital to stay connected. And oftentimes, we take for granted that we can get on any, I won't say any, but where I live in California, everything's so well connected with broadband. Whenever we want to look up information, it's right there. But that's not the case in all parts of the country. But I also wish that Representative Clyburn would talk about reparations more so than adopting a song, Lift Every Voice and Sing. I mean, there's been so much that we've gone through as a people and as a country, whether it's Black Americans or Native Americans. Lift Every Voice and Sing to be adopted as a Negro national anthem. That to me is a waste of time. If you're not talking about reparations and financial empowerment, then I don't need to sing any more songs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's about voting, Charlton, and it becomes a year in and year out thing. You're not going to get it done in one stroke of a pen. You have to build up clout, and that comes from voting. You can't sit around and say, I need these people to do something for me without backing them year after year, Charlton. You think about the fight to get politicians in. The ones who've been in there forever, basically the Republicans, have controlled everything. And so they have had no reason to give reparations in America. And that's the toughest fight you're ever going to have. Until they become the minority in the American population, when they go down to less than 45%, don't expect reparations until that time comes. They have to be less than 45% of the population of America.
Yeah, it still has to be put up for vote, because there are a lot of people that never thought that Georgia would flip the Senate with a black American as a senator. So I don't believe in never. You just got to put things out
there. But
right
now you have all these voting laws that are being put into place by these Republican houses in these states, 43 states, that are putting up obstruction of voting laws. This is the reason why H.R. 1 needs to pass. And unless H.R. 1 passes, Charlton, we're going to step back another 50 years in society.
Well, H.R. 1 will pass, and they're also going to have to end this filibuster. That can be done, and that's going to happen also. And I just hope that people in power right now will do the best they can to exercise their power and quit pretending that they lost the election into the insurrectionists, if that makes sense to you. It's all fair in love and war. I want to take a look at African American history. I know people talk about shutting up and dribbling and let's celebrate somebody who won a game, so stay out of politics. But everything's about life in politics, and politics is also a sport, Big C. We're inspired by the endeavors of these less celebrated competitors. Every pro team, Jackie Robinson, if that makes sense. August 26, 1947, Dan Bankhead, Big C. The Brooklyn Dodgers send Marine Corps veteran Dan Beckett to the mound. They made him the first African-American Major League pitcher. He also homers in his first at-bat. That was another for black athletes, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we think so much in today's world about the guys that we see on television, not the guys who made it, the opportunity for those guys to be seen on television. And you think about the exploits of Dan Bankhead. He may not even have been the best African-American pitcher around, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, they felt that he could withstand the vitriol and anger that he was going to get from white fans and players because of his time in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about every single opportunity for African-Americans to serve in this country, they did it. Even in the Civil War, there were whites that would not fight in the Civil War, and black soldiers were allowed to fight in the Civil War. And even when you deal with present-day Marines, Big C, or anyone in the military, there's so much that we've done as a group of people, not everybody, but as a group of people, to make things liberty and justice for all. There was a runway, I would say you could call it the takeoff, Big C. In 4 days, Dan Bankhead went from, think about this, in 4 days, he went from pitching in the Negro Leagues to pitching in the Major Leagues. And when you think about players right now on the move from team to team, he changed from leagues, Big C. And what have been a long, cruel journey for players like him to break the baseball's color barrier. Bankhead arrived suddenly, it was August 22nd, 1947, and he pitched for the Memphis Red Sox. At that time called the Memphis Red Sox. On August 26th, 1947, just 4 days later, he was 27 years old. He became the first black pitcher in Major League Baseball. But give me your thoughts, and maybe you don't know, but it's just a thought. What had to go through his mind, not only changing leagues, dealing with Jim Crow, dealing with all the pushback, but he was able to stay focused enough to be valuable enough to go from one league to another league and then pitch, and that happened in 4 days span, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, every black American knew of this country at that time, the racism that was abound and front and center that every black man had to face, and especially when you succeeded in society as a black man, how even more tough it was for you. Knowing that if you go out there and dominate white men, Charlton, that other white people will be, bothered by that and come at you in any kind of way. So, I mean, I think and attribute more of the mental toughness of the black athletes of that era than anything else, Charlton, because they were always great physical specimens.
Yeah.
But mentally, how strong they were as people to live through what they had to, conceive during those times and always being a threat of their lives.
Yeah, always having that. And it's just like opening up, talking about the first time for a Native American in the United States of America. Just because you may succeed at times and you may succeed at different things in life, it doesn't mean that everybody wants you to have that same success. And just like Jackie Robinson, Big C, before him, Bankhead broke ground as the Dodgers. Something about the LA Dodgers that just finished winning the World Series for 2020 in a COVID-19 environment, Big C. He became the fourth pitcher in Major League Baseball history to hit a home run in his first at-bat. He also appeared in his fourth regular season games for the Brooklyn Dodgers that year. So not only did he go from one league, the Negro Leagues, to the Major Leagues, Big C, he's also hit a home run in his first at-bat. And then something about the Dodgers that opened a lot of opportunities for people, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, one of the things I think about with black pitchers during that era, Charlton, is that they didn't get the generous strike zones from the umpires. The umpires were totally racist. And so, you know, for them, they always had to throw the ball down the middle of the plate to give white batters an opportunity to hit what they were throwing, which made it even tougher for them to succeed in Major League Baseball in the 40s, Charlton. But the Dodgers, you know, they signed the first player, they signed the first black pitcher, Charlton, to come into the major leagues, which is a great, you know, attribute for that organization.
Yeah.
But as we think about all the great players who were overlooked during those eras, who deserved the right to play in National Baseball, Charlton, at that time, white men knew that black players were better, and they did not want to give them the opportunity.
Do you feel that I mean, obviously when people talk about Rooney Rule and where we have the Russell Rule and people that are saying, well, we need to get more rules. Let's have more rules. Sometime if you're taken from somebody, you don't need a rule to give it back. Just give it back, Big C. Do you feel that the Rooney Rule and even the Russell Rule, they didn't have those rules when they were doing their thing, when the black men were doing their thing, you know, trying to integrate baseball, just looking for the same opportunities that mainstream had. So without the rules, what gave them the opportunity to go from one league to the next league, Big Z? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the Russell Rule and the Rooney Rule don't mean a damn thing in 2021. You got to be serious and honest about that. If you're putting in these rules in 2021, that means that you're bad already. And the people that are bad are the ones who are making the decisions. The rules don't make the decisions. What are you going to do? You're going to take the organization from somebody? No. The reason why black players integrated professional sports, Charlton, wasn't for the love of the black athlete. It was the love of the dollar that the black fan was paying in the stands to go watch the black athlete. You got to understand, you know, integration of the leagues was not about putting the best athlete on the field. It was about maximizing the money you made from the fans that came to the game.
Yeah, and it's amazing. They didn't need a rule to do it back then, and you would think the same thing would apply. Everybody wants to make more money. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. It's all fair and love and war. But doing this thing, you know, when you think about it, everyone thinks about Jackie Robinson, but really Dan Bankhead, Big C, August 26, 1947, another similar day in American sports history. Really appreciate everything that's gone on with African Americans. I do want to take a side note going from baseball to, I want to talk just a little bit about the passing of a boxing legend. You think about Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Big C, and, you know, a young man. When you think about it, I mean, everything that he accomplished was just, it was amazing. He was an American professional boxer, a film actor who competed boxing from 1973. Think about that, to 1987. I mean, when you think about Marvelous Marvin Hagler, I think one of the best fights I ever saw was against Thomas Hitman Hearns, and that fight where he beat up Thomas Hearns, and everybody knows that he also beat Sugar Ray Leonard, but that wasn't given to him, and that made him so sick to his stomach that he decided to walk away. Thomas Hitman Hearns was amazing, but Marvelous Marvin Hagler was even more marvelous. He retired with a career record. He was 62 wins, Big C, 3 losses, and 2 draws. Of his 62 wins, 52 he put people to sleep, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, one of the most profound boxers of all time, Charlton, and he was robbed late in his career. But I had the utmost respect for him because he wasn't like everybody else saying that I'm gone and come back a year or two later. When he walked away because he had been screwed over by the boxing officials in
Yep.
boxing talking
Yep.
when they robbed him against Sugar Ray Leonard
Yeah.
after he won 8 out of the 12 rounds. He said enough is enough. I can't fight the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But it's an unfortunate death of Marvin Hagler. Unfortunately, Charlton, 2 weeks before his death of a heart attack, he had taken the COVID-19 vaccination shot. And this is one of the things that a lot of black people are fearful of. How will their systems react to it?
Yeah.
And so, we don't know the final outcome yet, from an autopsy report, Charlton. But to have taken this shot 2 weeks before his death and be in the optimum health that this man was, it's a sad day.
Yeah, no, Hank Aaron supposedly had passed recently after taking his shot also.
2 weeks after he took his shot.
Yeah, and that's like going back to the Tuskegee Institute, and people say, oh, don't worry about it, just take the shot. And unfortunately, you have people that are relatively healthy that have, met an end because, I don't know I haven't seen the whole finding of it. My just thoughts and prayers to his family. But I just want to touch a little bit more on Marvelous Marvin Hagler. And I say, everyone, talk to your doctors, but you got to know, talk to your doctors as people start telling you, take this shot from someone you don't even know. They got people out here giving injections. And they're driving up in a like a fast food line to get an injection. You can't go to your doctor's office. You got to go to some football stadium and have them sticking needles in your body. I don't know. Everybody has their own opinion. But Marvin Hagler, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Big C, born May 23rd, 1954. And when you think about it, passed on March 13th, 2021. Think about what he was able to do as a boxer, though. Because he fought in the time... right now, if I were to ask you who's the heavyweight champion of the world, maybe people might come up with Tyson Fury. But at the same time, when Hagler was doing this thing, you had Roberto Duran, you had Sugar Ray Leonard, you had Thomas Hitman Hearns, and then, Marvin himself doing this thing. There were a lot of good boxers right around that time, and either one of those guys at any point in time could have been the champion at their division, Big C. We don't see that now, and he still put 52 people to sleep out of 63 fighters, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, ironically, Charlton, all 4 of those men were middleweights, and they all held titles during that same era. Probably the greatest middleweight era in boxing history to have those 4 individuals, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, and the late Marvin Hagler, Charlton. All of these members are in the Boxing Hall of Fame. Just a great time for boxing in the world.
Great time for boxing in the world. He was also the Ring Fighter of the Year. Think about this. If you think about, he was named Fighter of the Decade. Not Fighter of the Year, the Decade. Fighter of the Decade, Big C, 1980s by Boxing Illustrated magazine. Twice named Fighter of the Year by the Ring magazine and the Boxing Writers Association of America in 2001 and 2004. The Ring named him the 4th greatest middleweight of all time. In 2002, named him the 17th greatest fighter of the past 69 years. The International Boxing Research Organization rates Hagler, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, as the 6th greatest middleweight of all time. And Boxing Rex rates him the 29th greatest boxer of all time, pound for pound. Many analysts, Big C, writers that consider Hagler to have one of the most durable chins in boxing history, having been knocked down only one time in his entire professional career. And he was going through giants, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Sugar Ray Robinson's the greatest middleweight of all time. When you think about his record, that he went 91 consecutive fights without a loss, Charlton. Just the most devastating fighter in over 200 fights in his career. But Marvin Hagler is the guy that we remember from television because of his dominance in the ring.
Yeah.
And his professionalism in and out. He not only was he a great charismatic man in the ring, but he also took that outside the ring. When he left the boxing arena, Charlton, he went into acting over in Italy. So he had a second life beyond the ring because of his intelligence. And that's one of the things that more people need to look at, is that life after that one profession.
Yeah, very, very, very well life lived. Just a young man, and that's a shame. And there's so much speculation around why it happened. I do wish his family the very best, and my condolences very much so. At the same time, Big C, I want to get back into the hardwood of women's basketball. And sometimes things in life are not fair. And that's why you got to ferret things out, Big C. College basketball's only undefeated women's team You would think, oh, maybe UConn, or maybe Stanford, or maybe Tennessee, or South Carolina. No. College basketball's only undefeated women's team, they're not going to the NCAA tournament, Big C. California Baptist continue to dream season on Saturday. They won the Western Athletic Conference tournament, Big C, adding yet another year of victory to its perfect. Big C, 24-0. That means they never lost a basketball game. Just 3 years after moving up from Division II, the Lancers are now the only unbeaten team in women's college basketball, but they can't go to the dance, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's an unfortunate thing based on NCAA restrictions, Charlton, when you move divisions. But, I mean, when you think about that, you're punishing the student athletes when you do things like that. And the women are student athletes.
Yeah.
They're not all out there about the money and going to the next level after 1 year. They're about getting an education. But to rob them of their lifelong aspirations is bad move amongst the NCAA.
Yeah, the NCAA there's some oligarchy of power. They make rules where they get the money and the athletes don't. And now you have a perfect undefeated season. And they say, yeah, but we have some rules that they got to go. If they didn't dot all the I's and cross the T's because they got too good too early, that story won't be continuing the NCAA tournament despite California Baptist. Maybe if they were called California Lutheran or California Christian as opposed to California Baptist, they would have made a way for them to get in, Big C. They had a win over Grand Canyon University in the conference finals. It will instead be Utah Valley who gets to the WAC automatic bid to March Madness. California Baptist instead will head to the Women's NIT National Invitation Tournament, which preceded the NCAA tournament, Big C. In the rears of the Lancers got too good too soon. I don't like that, but the rules are based what the rules are for the good old boys that make up the NCAA. There's only California Baptist's third season at the Division I level, and the NCAA requires a 4-year tradition, a 4-year transit period before they can reclassify teams, and they're banned from most of its prestigious tournaments. Hey, if you go and win the NIT, I mean, it's not the same thing because it's somewhat watered down, but why are they good enough for the NIT, the tournament that preceded the NCAA, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you would think that the NCAA is the governing body of all these basketball tournaments, Charlton, but these ladies were dealt a bad hand in college basketball.
Yeah, they got it dealt a bad hand in college basketball, and I just wonder, Ohio State, I believe they got to the college football national championship Final Four, and I believe they only had 6 conference wins in the Big Ten. And I think most other teams had at least 10 wins. It was Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame. They had 10 wins, I believe. Some may have had more than 10. But I know Ohio State got in as an undefeated team, but those are boys, right? So what's up with the NCAA saying that the women that went 24-0, which is 4 times 6 victories that Ohio State had, and they won't let them get in as women, Big C, the same season, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, everybody knows that the women in college sports have a disadvantage. This is the reason why they have to operate under Title IX, is that they don't get equity.
Yeah, it's a shame. But anyone knows that they have an undefeated Ohio State that had 6 wins. When the NCAA said, well, you got to have 9 or 10 wins to be considered for bowl consideration. But they got them with 6. And they did beat a team that had more wins in Clemson. Then they lost to Alabama. But they can do more for 6 wins than they can do for 24 wins. But the 24 women compared to 6 men wins, I guess they don't count that the same. It's all fair in Leavenworth. Big C. College basketball, I'm telling you, Patrick Ewing, he had maybe the best career of a basketball player at Georgetown, going on to the NBA, as well as dominating with the Knicks, NBA Finals, and then now he's coaching, Big C. I've always felt that some of my friends were talking about that thing that happened in Madison Square Garden was a publicity stunt. Who was talking about Patrick Ewing before that happened? Nobody. But now Georgetown is back in the NCAA tournament, and this time it's with a program led by a legend who could not get into Madison Square Garden, if you believe that, Big C. The great Patrick Ewing as his head coach. The Hoyas, the number 8 seed in the Big East tournament. In the early 1980s, the 7-foot Ewing was a key cog that brought the Hoyas their first and only national championship in 1984 under the late John Thompson. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, this is a proper move, that happened for Georgetown University. for all of what Patrick Ewing had to go through with security at Madison Square Garden to keep his team focused on the eye of the prize, Charlton, and that's what they did. They went in and captured his first Big East title as a coach. He's also duplicated this as a player. And wouldn't it be marvelous to see the team make a run in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, it would be marvelous to see them make a run. But as my friends and I were laughing out here in California, we said, when's the last time anybody heard from Patrick Ewing? It just so happened to get right before the media hype and all that stuff going on. They did get hey, if they earned it, they earned it. But it's just conspicuous how it came to this guy can't get to the most famous building in New York, Big C, for sports. It's not the old Hickey Stadium, it's Madison Square Garden, and he couldn't get in, and now the Hoyas are back fighting for March Madness. It started with a 19-point win over Marquette in the first round. Next came a big upset, a 72-71 victory over number 1 seed Villanova in the quarterfinals, and it happened to be Villanova that stopped them from getting a repeat back in the day. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, they beat the best-dressed man in college basketball, Jay Wright, so
yeah.
They did something right in this game.
Yep, good pun. I like the pun, Big C. They did something right, and, of course, Wright gives all that money to his players. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. We're going to come back and talk about doing the right thing. They got Patrick Ewing and the Hoyas not only in the Madison Square Garden, but they're back in March Madness. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps that even the great Patrick Ewing can follow Big C Sports podcast. I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up, and I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Going back to that big game, some people call it an upset. Ewing doesn't call it an upset. When they beat rival Villanova, the #1 seed, 72-71, it was a quarterfinals game, Big C, and the Hoyas, actually in the semifinals, Georgetown, they also outlasted Seton Hall. And that's by the score of, I believe that was a 66-58 score, Big C. And it set up Saturday Night Showdown against Creighton, and they came up with an impressive 73-48 victory. Do you think the shenanigans that happened at Madison Square Garden, that I still think was a stunt, you think that got more of the good old boys on Georgetown to play better, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I think that, when you think about Ewing and his appearance in the Big East tournament, Charlton, is that someplace that he was a regular when he was a player.
Yeah.
And so he knew the mentality that you needed to play this tournament. I mean, when you think about the young men that go out on the court, it's about their producing and coaching, understanding what moves you need to make, whether you need to, bring in players or take out players, Charlton.
Yeah.
Certain diagrams you need to set up offensively and defensively. But I think it's about delivering a message to your players that beyond the adversity that you may see off the court, is that when you're on the court, you are one together.
Yeah, one together. A lot of young kids rallied around the great Patrick Ewing. I still remember how Georgetown, I'm a West Coast guy, but when John Thompson had Georgetown at the top of the mountain, Big C, I was pulling for them all the time because outside of UNLV, I really didn't see a lot of African-American basketball players that were headed by an African-American coach. So just seeing John Thompson on TV a lot with the Georgetown, that opened so many eyes around the country, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, seeing John Thompson out there, Don Chaney, Charlton, who was at UMass during that time. I mean, we had some great black coaches on the East Coast. I mean, it's always been a hotbed for black coaches in college basketball.
Yeah.
And they've always led the way. They've given players opportunities that would not have had them if not for these black coaches, Charlton. And they become fine contributors in society because of those opportunities.
Yeah, I would have thought there would have been, I know John Thompson's son got a chance to coach in basketball also, but I would have thought that there would be even more opportunities for African Americans to get the coaching phone call, if that makes sense to you, because a lot of times you still think there'd be more than what we've seen, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, if you think about African-American coaches, Charlton, only African-American coaches to ever win NCAA titles have been in the South and the East, Charlton. When you think about, Tubby Smith down in Kentucky winning a national title, Nolan Smith at Arkansas winning a national title, both of those coaches in the SEC. John Thompson, the first African-American coach to win a national title at Georgetown, Charlton. So when we think about the opportunities for black coaches, they've come in the South and in the East, as far as an opportunity to be in big-time programs to win.
Yeah, that's very well said, Big C. So I really hope that Georgetown can at least get past the first couple of rounds, just because I remember what that university did to give African Americans a chance with the prominence they had. So it's all fair and level war. I also want to touch a little bit about the Supreme Court. The people that say sports and politics don't mix, that's just not true at all. It always mixes. There'd be no basketball without the chance of smart people putting things together, Big C. College athletics. The Supreme Court case that could and should reshape NCAA amateurism, Big C. Think about this. It's called the Appellee Landmark. It's a landmark NCAA versus Alston case. It's filed the Supreme Court brief this week with the Alston lawyers laying out their game plan for a case that could and should reshape amateurism, Big C. The case is scheduled to be heard on March 30th. That's just the end of his butt, Big C. On March 30th, that case is set to be heard. To recap, the Supreme Court has decided, Big C, to hear an appeal from the NCAA and 11 conferences arguing against a district court's ruling in favor of Alston that allowed unlimited education-based benefits for athletes. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think they're all looking at the Reggie Bush scenario out there at USC, where an athlete could get over $350,000 in non-scholarship benefits, to help him and his family out, Charlton. But amateurism, everybody's looked at it over the years. What is truly amateurism? When you have athletes who compete in the Olympics and still allowed to compete on college campuses, Charlton, after getting sponsorships, from winning medals in the Olympics.
Yeah.
So as we look at, they only want to handcuff football players and basketball players when you talk about amateurism, Charlton, because you can be a baseball player, get drafted, go to college, a la Kyler Murray, Tim Tebow, and many others, Charlton.
Yeah.
And play professional baseball in off-season, Russell Wilson, and then go compete in college football during this vet season.
Yeah.
And have money in your pocket. So you got to take that handcuff of amateurism off these athletes, Charlton, and let them allow them to make their work while they're on a college campus.
Yeah, that is so important when we think about that. We were talking about the African American farmers, Big C, that President Joe Biden has in the new stimulus package, Big C, and we realized that black farmers in the last 100 years have lost 90% of their wealth, all because the United States Department of Agriculture refused. That means they said no to black farmers that were looking to get grants and loans.
You got to realize that came from Deb Haaland, the new Interior Secretary. She was the one who wrote that bill into the stimulus package, Charlton. A Native American woman made sure that black farmers got paid and compensated for what had been taken from them over the decades.
Yes, and that's why I say politics, you need smart people to look out for young people. They shouldn't have to have the intelligence of a lawyer or of the law itself, Big C. I always believe in having the higher authorities look out for young people and not blame it to their parents. Some parents don't have the acumen to do the same thing either. But the NCAA, understandably concerned because of the implications that ruling has on its version of amateurism. And just like guys like Jay Wright can wear a $2,000 suit on the sideline and basketball players can't get a $20 steak dinner, Big C. And so the association continues to
argue. Where in the hell you find a $20 steak dinner? I want to go there.
You ever go down to Las Vegas? They got a lot of steaks for $20. I tell you.
Yeah, but the heart still beats on that one.
It don't. Some people like the heart still beat, but $20 in Las Vegas. If you want them bigger, there's a French Laundry in San Francisco. They got steaks about the size of the palm of your hand, and they cost a lot more than they cost in Las Vegas. They taste about the same. But I think the association, the NCAA, they don't want to do what the USDA did. They don't want to have to share resources with people of color, Big C. Most of those athletes are young black kids. just like the USDA, they told the black farmers, no, your dirt's not good enough to give a loan to, your cows are not good enough to make loans on, and that's what the NCAA is doing to young black athletes, my opinion. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they've done it forever, Charlton. I mean, any way that you're going to press black members of society in America, it has been done for the last 400 years. When you know that this person has a right and a legal right to earn a living, and yet you oppose that. I mean, we talked about the Negro Leagues in baseball, how they opposed black players playing in that league because they knew they were better, and if they played the number of black players that were better, you might have saw one or two white players on a roster, Charlton.
Yeah, and so that's what the NCAA is all about. The association continues to argue those unlimited benefits could lead to what would be essentially bidding war for athletes. What's a bidding war for athletes? They have a bidding war for coaches. No one's paying a coach $7 million to coach football or $10 million if they're not bidding with other schools. And why not give the athletes a chance? And everyone they want to throw up when you say, wait a minute, we can't give those black farmers money, or we can't give those black athletes money. Something's wrong. But they've been bidding for white coaches for years, whether it's Nick Saban down in the SEC or Dabo Swinney in the ACC, Helton out here in the Pac-12. They're always bidding. Sarkisian was bid on by Washington, USC, Alabama, now Texas. They bid to give him more money. Les Miles got bid on when he left LSU and went to Kansas. They've always bidding for something, but when it comes to paying black players, these schools act like the USDA can't give money to black farmers. So decisions projected for late June. College athletes already make money. Why not let them do the same thing the white counterparts do, just like black farmers should be able to get money like white farmers? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, this is white America, and anything you can do to oppress black people on any level, you do it. I mean, you do it through the courts, you do it through legislation, you do that consistently. It's always been there. I mean, coaches can leave a college at any time because someone has bidded more money for them without any restrictions. They don't have to sit out a year. They don't have to lose a year of eligibility. But it has been in the past where athletes, if you leave a university and transfer, you would lose a year of eligibility. You had to sit out before you could play. So you were punished because you were a black athlete leaving. If you were a white coach, they brought you in with open arms and said, where do you want to live? And that was it. So, I mean, blacks have always gotten the short end of a stick in America.
And sometimes we do it to ourselves, too. It's not just white people doing it to black people. Sometimes the black people give the other black people the short end of the stick.
But we're talking about sports right here.
No,
how many black coaches are there in college football in America where they're getting the chance to jump across from university to university? And regardless, they're all recruiting these black athletes. And when these black athletes, up until they put this transfer portal in 2 years ago, were stuck at these universities whether they played or not. If they wanted to leave, they had to sit out for a year before they could contribute at another university. These white coaches would leave the school that they were in, go to a better paying job, and coach that next season.
Yeah, but my point was, if we talk about what blacks do to blacks also, you can't say everything's been perfect. There's a lot of times people do harm to other black men and women.
So these black men are running these universities. That's what I'm getting at. They're leaving one coaching job at a university, going to another one because some institution offered them more money, and they left all the kids behind that they recruited.
No,
that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, well, that's just your opinion, but I'm just also telling you, and this is my thought, because you open up talking about a Native American that's responsible for putting together some legislation. And that's fine that legislation was put together. But what I'm suggesting, and everybody has an opinion, even a dog when it itches, a dog when it has an itch, it will scratch itself. It doesn't wait for someone to come up and scratch it, Big C. When I talk about member of the House, Jim Clyburn, he's been credited with helping President Joe Biden get the black vote. At the same time, we talk about the USDA that disenfranchised black farmers for over 100 years. They never asked Congress to make a song to pay homage to white farmers. They gave them money. They gave them land. They let them buy land that they would not give money for black farmers on that same land. And all I'm saying is there needs to be a conversation on reparations more than singing a song, lift every voice and sing. No, lift every bank account and uplift black Americans that way for the money that's been stolen over the years and that conversation has to happen. I don't want to sing any more songs, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, it comes down to voting, and when we think about the disenfranchising of blacks over the centuries from voting, Charleston, and even the moves that are being done today by these white Republican House members across the country and these state legislators, Charleston, 43 states that are putting up bills to obstruct black voting. That's what we need to get beyond. We need to get beyond white people obstructing the opportunities for minorities in America to succeed.
Yeah, I'm asking our decent white brethren and our decent all brethren, men and women, to do the best thing for all people. I love having that conversation, Big C. I don't want to lift anybody's voice and sing. I want them to address the financial inequalities that have been, it's by design, like it's called the Color of Law. Everybody should read that book. I want to bounce into the NBA because the NBA and the NFL, they have a lot of successful men, but they have a different players union. NBA has a much better contract than the NFL does, and there's a reason for that. Maybe because there's fewer people, but it takes bright minds. Saturday, Big C, it was the first day in the NBA history where 5 different players, Julius Randle, 26 points, 12 rebounds, 12 assists for the New York Knicks, a career-high 12 assists. Maybe they should have Patrick Ewing come to Madison Square Garden and raise more cane, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it was a joyous weekend for Madison Square Garden for Gibson, Charleston, when you think about Julius Randle. He was a player that's bounced around with 3 different teams. You know, he was with the Lakers, with the Pelicans, and now he's found a home with the Knicks.
Yeah, he's found a home with the Knicks. And since Patrick Ewing been stirring up some noise in Madison Square Garden, a lot of good boys are getting riled up. It's all fair and love and war. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Big C. Think about this. 33 points, 11 assists, 11 rebounds, put on a clinic, and he did that against Washington, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the Wizards, he put on a magical show against them, that everybody had.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not nice when you put on that kind of a clinic. Those are numbers that the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would normally have. Big C's all fair 11 war. Wilton Chamberlain said 33 points, 11 assists, 11 rebounds. Yeah, so what? That's halftime for Wilton Chamberlain, Big C. Russell Westbrook, 42 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists for the Washington Wizards, even though it didn't have the kind of game that Giannis had, but that's a good stat, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the 42 points, I mean, we're so accustomed to Westbrook putting up triple-doubles, Charleston. It's day and night for him. Yeah,
it's day and night for him. I only think of you on 2 occasions, day and night. I think that was true from back in the day, Big C. That brought back some good memories, day and night. I only think about you on 2 occasions, that day and night. I think it was true, or maybe it was after 7, but I know the song was a good song. It's all fair level war. Domantas Sabonis, Big C, Indiana Pacers, 22 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists, and 4 steals, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, a tip off the whole block, Charleston. You think about his dad, a great center with the Portland Trailblazers, Arvydas Sabonis, Charleston. He came to the NBA in the latter part of his career, but one of the greatest international centers of all time.
Yeah, one of the greatest of all time, Big C, all fair and level war. 3-point, James Harden, Artesia High School, California's finest, 24 points. Had kind of an off-day shooting. You know, he decided he scored less, but he picked up 10 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 block shots for Harden, and the last 10 points scored by the Brooklyn Nets. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, you know, you got to put Harden in some serious MVP consideration conversation, Charleston. You know, the way that the Nets have taken off since he's arrived with that team, because they're going to be without Kevin Durant for at least another month.
Yeah.
He's the backbone of that organization now.
Yeah, maybe they don't need Kevin Durant to come back because he's driving that car pretty good right now down the New Jersey Turnpike. Is all fair and love and war, even though Brooklyn's on the other side of the river from Jersey. A recorded triple-double, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Russell Westbrook, Big C, become the 6th pair of opponents to drop 30-plus points. And think about this. The triple-doubles in an NBA history with Milwaukee outlasting Washington, seeing 2. I mean, I think Russell Westbrook, there's sometimes he's just not the same guy, but I think he plays as hard as anybody in the league. But Giannis is kind of the most consistent player, at least over the last couple of years in the NBA. Maybe not the overall aggression that Westbrook has, but both of those guys are doing their thing. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that was one of those nights that whatever you can do, I can do better, Charlton.
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook, him playing along Bradley Beal, if they had a big in the middle of that offense there in Washington, who knows how good this team could be.
Yeah, who knows how good they could be. It's all fair and love and war. Really love when NBA players are doing their thing. Speaking of NBA, I want to touch on this thing that happened. March Madness has been decided. It's a little bit different this year because I'm not really. No one knows. We didn't have March Madness last year. I know the whole world was dealing with COVID-19, and unlike NBA basketball, it's hard to know what players are on any team. But the brackets are all set, and whether people believe it's going to be Gonzaga, which I think is going to cut down the nets and have that one shining moment. Other people think it might be Baylor, Iowa, or some people are just choosing, whatever team. Maybe Michigan comes back up into the thing. But I just want to go over a couple of these teams. Number 1 seed Gonzaga versus number 16 seed Appalachian State. Number 8 is Oklahoma, and they're playing number 9 Missouri. And then you have all over the country. So I'll get into it more later. Number 5 seed Creighton versus UC Santa Barbara. And then you have, like, Virginia won it last time. They're playing Ohio out of that conference. Southern California is playing the winner of Wichita State and Drake. So everybody has the chance to see March Madness. But I like this idea that it's all going to be held in Indianapolis, Big C. And I like it not only because of COVID, but unlike the regular March Madness where you got to fly all over the country and then just a lot of different time away from home and different plane flights, hotels, if you have the ability to travel, you could just go to one city and wait it out and see all the games that you can get into, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, but it's still, it's about the amount of attendance that they're going to allow in the arena, Charlton, and we're not knowing what that is going to be. I don't think it's going to be capacity, but I think that's all part of the experience that the young men on the college level look forward to, is moving around the country from city to city, going places that you may have never been in your life.
Yeah, going places they may have never been in their life. And also Indianapolis, Indiana's a great city for basketball. I'm sure they'll have a good time. Hopefully they'll stay on top of COVID. But speaking of staying on top of COVID, you have NCAA college basketball, Big C. The women of UConn, and I think about California Baptist, that's 24-0, and they can't go to the NCAAs, but they will go to the NIT. The women of UConn University, the Huskies, they finished ranked number 1 for the 16th regular season under the great coach Gino Auriemma, who's also dealing with COVID protocol. Big C, your thoughts?
And there you go. The coach has COVID, so will he be able to coach?
Yeah, who knows? They have obviously some time to deal with it. They have assistant coaches, and the girls will figure out a way to get it done. It's just a matter of time, and everybody's staying healthy. I want to touch it on a story that's not the most pleasant story, but it happens, and it happens all over the country. And there are times when people just gotta do the right thing, and sometimes people don't want to do the right thing. High school basketball, we used to do Big C's Friday Night Lights for high school football last year before COVID showed up, Big C. There was an announcer for Oklahoma high school basketball game that used racial slurs after the team decided to kneel during the anthem. It's amazing that there's still people on the air that have a problem with kneeling, but not a problem with an insurrection at the nation's capital. An Oklahoma School District longtime sports announcer called the names of the opposing teams pretty disgusting at the start of a high school girls basketball game. As the students from Norman High School, they kneel, one asked, "Are they kneeling? I hope Norman gets their blankety blanks whipped." And the announcer went on to use the N-word, and it reminds me of, there was a radio personality that called some black women the late Don Imus called some black women nappy-headed blankety blank blank, but they don't seem to have a problem shouting down insurrection. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about, here's a guy in the state of Oklahoma who's been a long time announcer of high school athletics.
Long time.
Football, basketball, most likely baseball also, Charlton, who wants to denigrate these young black athletes when they're playing for the state championship. And who knows how long he's been saying this. This is not a one-off. That you're going to say, you hope these young ladies get their effing A kick, in a basketball event.
Yeah.
And that's totally wrong. That's disrespectful and all that. Then he's going to come in and call them effing the N-word, okay? At what point will this tolerance not be tolerated anymore in America? Because here it is that you go out and you say this about these young women. That means you have no respect for black people at any point in your life. And you can say that whatever made you say this, you made yourself say it. And you were comfortable in saying it. The vitriol, and not only that, Charlton, the people who employ him to make excuses for him, to allow him to stay on the air, because it came out that he was diabetic and he didn't know what he was saying. Okay, so you've been diabetic for a long time, and when you see these young black girls take a knee on the court for the national anthem, your diabetes all of a sudden kicked in, and you had an insulin problem at that point. That you had to use this negative vitriol towards these young women who've never done anything negative to you, I think they have this thing called the First Amendment, the right to free speech and protest, Charlton, in America. And he didn't say that about those white boys that was attacking the nation capital, or those white women that was attacking the nation capital, killing police officers, looking to kill our elected politicians. He didn't say that about them. That was okay. That was acceptable because they were white. But these young black women who have had enough. You think about the Tulsa riots 100 years ago, when they burned down the Black Wall Street. That's not too far from Norman. They probably had relatives that were a part of that, Charlton, that were victims of that event. So when you think about these young ladies getting political awareness in America and having the right to voice it peacefully, and you still get this attack from old white men in America, when will it change?
Well, Big C, you and I differ on that, because I do a lot of AAU basketball, and even in the own black community, people make excuses for it, but you can become a multi-millionaire if you put that word in your music with a nice beat long enough, and a lot of people know that, so it's hard to get on the grandstand when somebody else says it. Maybe they were listening to the favorite rapper that makes $1 million for denigrating their own people. It's all fair in love and war. I want to touch on this football player. His name is Touchdown Drew Brees, Big C. And I remember he took a lot of flack when he said that he will not tolerate anybody not standing for the national anthem. And some men of color opened his eyes and let him know that black Americans have fought in every war. You know, there were some white soldiers that opted out of the Civil War. They ran, and they had to draft like 200,000 black soldiers that were not even free to fight for the Civil War, Big C. And people say, well, I can't stand someone who takes a knee. Black men have fought for every single thing. And he came around and capitulated. He didn't know. No one taught him better, Big C. But he eventually learned. But New Orleans Saints quarterback, Touchdown Drew Brees, his son makes an official football retirement announcement for his dad. Now, rumor has it that Drew Brees wasn't aware that his daddy said that he was going to retire, Big C, but I guess he acquiesced and said he would go along with it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Drew wanted to make this retirement announcement on his 15th anniversary of signing with the New Orleans Saints after spending 5 years with the former San Diego Chargers, Charlton.
Yeah.
And he's been there through all the thick and thin in New Orleans, Katrina, and everything else that has affected that city. And he's adopted it and become their native son. He's done a lot of great for that city, even though he had some challenges understanding black culture completely.
Yeah.
So, he had an illustrious career as a player. It was time for Drew to go. His arm had left him, but now you'll be seeing him on Sunday Night Football on NBC.
Yeah, they're gonna put him in the booth and give him a chance to do that. Retired Sunday, age of 42 years old. The most prolific passer in NFL history, Big C, throwing for a league record 80,358 yards, and he did that in 20 seasons, Big C. And when you think about throwing for 80,358 yards in 20 seasons, and some of those yards he could have added on, because I would say every year of those 20 years, he probably had at least 100 yards called back in each game because of penalties, or drop passes, or offsides by maybe the lineman jump, illegal procedure, whatever. But I would think about a man that could throw for 80,000 yards, and it's never been done before, He's not your prototypical 6'4", 6'5" quarterback. He comes in probably about 6 feet tall, and he's able to just find the groove and thread the needle. He helped uplift the New Orleans on and off the field after Hurricane Katrina that you talked about, arriving along with Coach Sean Payton in 2006. Led the Saints to the first and only Super Bowl victory. 3 years later, led them to the playoffs 9 times in 15 years, rivaling former Green Bay Packers defensive end Reggie White. Big C is the best free agent signing in league history. Just one more thing about touchdown Drew Brees. As a defensive guy, what made him able to throw for 80,000 yards and he wasn't 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", Big C? Your thoughts?
Call an offensive line and a passing scheme to get rid of the ball in a hurry, Charlton. He had some big receivers that allowed him to find him downfield. I mean, if you look at the guys he had throughout his career, Marcus Colston, Jimmy Graham, the young man that he has right now, I can't think of his name, number 13, Thomas. He's had a wealth of tall receivers over his career that has really helped him out.
Yeah, it really helped him out over the years, Big C. I wish him nothing but the best. I would think that Jameis Winston would get the chance to come in and under the tutelage that he learned under Brees last year. I think that would help Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston came in and threw one pass against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoff game and actually went for a touchdown. And Sean Payton said, wait a minute, that's not the script. And they took him out and had him sit on the sideline. And they let touchdown Drew Brees come back in and finish out his last game at the Superdome or Mercedes-Benz Dome down in New Orleans. It's all fair and love and war. I wish him nothing but the best. Big C, last story for the sports universe. Major League Baseball. When I was a young boy, I remember a name by the name of Kurt Galley. I also remember guys that called baseball games. There's a Cooper and Kuiper here in the Bay Area. There's a couple other guys that I've heard. Vin Scully been doing baseball. He did it for about 60 years, Big C. And I always have to do, I think it was either Fox or CBS or maybe an ABC. Major League Baseball, YouTube, Big C. They're going to broadcast 21 games starting April 7th, 2021. You have so many more options to watch baseball this year, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about all the different media outlets out there, I mean, you think about the Super Bowl that was on the Cartoon Network, being broadcast, or Nickelodeon, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody's getting into the broadcast, but that just means there's more money for the players.
Yeah, more money for the players, and YouTube making a thing. I mean, there's so many times that you have these nouveau riche companies that are challenging what used to be the 3-channel network. Now you have so many channels. Maybe Big C Sports will also broadcast Major League Baseball in 2021. It's all fair and love and war. Really appreciate everything happening in the sports universe. I hope that everybody can stay safe. And even though they're starting to say they're changing some of the guidelines for social distancing, people, please wear your mask. Don't be foolish. Whatever you got to do, talk to your doctors and make sure you're doing the right thing. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. With all you've got to use, how can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, the heavyweights in boxing are trying to get back on the grand old stage. Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua have signed a 2-fight deal. They're trying to make it relevant again to go up against the MMA. And once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. They're always on the front line standing up against anybody.
Always on the front line standing up against anybody. You got to rise and shine. Rise and shine every day. Rise and shine. You can rise and shine every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.